left a record of their journeys by carving a runic inscription on their gravestones. This one, for example, tells of a Viking who left Scandinavia, visited Jerusalem, and then died in Greece. It's hard to believe that the Vikings did travel so far, but here at Jorvik they've got evidence to prove it, because amongst the thousands of objects that they uncovered when they were digging were these. A cowrie shell that came from the Red Sea. Now that's over 2,000 kilometers away. But look over here. This is a Viking sock, and I'm very lucky to be able to pick it up because normally it's kept in a display case. It's very, very fragile, so I'll pick it up very carefully. You can see that it's kind of brown and discolored now, but the scientists have analyzed it and discovered that originally it was white with a red rim. The dye for the red rim, well, that came from a Mediterranean beetle called the Kermes beetle. So the Vikings would use their ships for fighting and trading. But what else? Well, they would go fishing, as these people are here, pottering around the coast. And they went exploring. We know about all this because of the sagas. The sagas are stories that were written down sometime after it had all happened. They're not as accurate as real history, but they paint a very clear picture of those early explorers. The Vikings travelled in open boats with very little protection. And if they were going to start a new settlement, they took with them all the animals they would need. When they headed west from Scandinavia, their first voyages took them to Iceland. And then on to Greenland. The man who discovered Greenland was called Eric the Red. He had been exiled for 3 years for killing someone, and he put the time to good use by starting a new settlement. Meanwhile, sailors came back with stories of an even bigger land in the west. Eric would have loved to explore this country as well, but he was getting too old by now, and he left it to his son Leif. The voyage went well. And when they landed, they soon found that the new country was a much pleasanter place to live in than Greenland. It was not so cold and gloomy, and there were even wild grapes growing there. They decided to call it Vinland, which means wineland. Nowadays we call it something else. Yes, the Vikings had discovered America. Leif headed for home to spread the good news, and as his ship drew close to Greenland, he spotted some shipwrecked people clinging to rocks. Among them was a beautiful Norwegian woman called Gudrid, and Leif took her back to his father's house. She lived there for some time until she met a ship's captain called Karlsefni. The two of them fell in love, and they decided to make a home for themselves in the new country of Vinland. They loaded up the ship with everything they needed, along with one of their most valuable possessions, a big black bull. And then they set sail. On arrival, they found that the new land was just as fertile as they'd been told. They were delighted, and that autumn they had another cause to celebrate. Gudrid gave birth to a son called Snorri. He was the first European child to be born in America. Not long afterwards, some Indians came to trade with them, and unfortunately, while they were there, the big black bull roared angrily. The Indians fled in panic. They were terrified by the black monster. When they returned, they were armed to the teeth and determined to drive away their pale-faced visitors. This was the first of many attacks, and finally, very reluctantly, Gudrid and Karlsefni decided to leave Vinland. On the way home, Karlsefni died, but Gudrid's travels were far from over. By now she had become a Christian, and she decided to go on a pilgrimage to Rome. Imagine what she must have felt as she gazed at the great cathedrals and squares. It was all such a contrast to her life in Vinland. It was another long journey. This time it was back to Iceland. there she lived with her American-born son, close to the little church that he had built. Gudrid ended her days as a nun, loved and respected by all. What a life she had led, and what stories she had to tell. Fighting, trading, exploring. Oh, and there was one other thing that the Vikings used their ships for. Pulling down bridges. Well, to be honest, it didn't happen very often. But the occasion that I'm thinking of is one that you really ought to know about, because it's part of one of our nursery rhymes.
The bridge is falling down, falling down, falling down. The bridge is falling down, my fair lady.
Yes, London Bridge is falling down. It's the story of a Viking raid. What happened was that a man called Olaf was sailing up the Thames with his fleet, and he found his way blocked by London Bridge. The people of London attacked Olaf's ships with a barrage of stones, spears and arrows. At first it looked as though Olaf would have to turn back, but he soon worked out the answer. He got his men to row forward and fasten ropes around the base of the bridge. Then they rowed away as fast as they could, hauling on the ropes as they did so. And hey presto, London Bridge had fallen down. Those Viking ships got everywhere, even into our nursery rhymes. We're going to end with another Viking ship, this time a modern one. Way up to the north of Scotland are some islands called the Shetlands. The people there are descended from Vikings, and once a year they like to commemorate this at the festival of Op Helliar. They march through the streets at night in a torchlit procession and carry with them a full-scale model of a Viking ship. At the end of the procession, they will hurl their torches onto the ship and set light to it. It's their way of paying tribute to their ancestors, to the Vikings of old who came sailing across the seas in their longships.
Like this, like,